Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to another series of our AFRH monthly webinars. My name is Mrs. Bamio Abdullahi Saleh, a clinical psychologist, and co-moderating, I will be your main moderator for today. Co-moderating with me is Mr. Joseph Ua, a clinical embryologist. So can you unmute and say hello to the participants?
Hello, everyone.
Thank you, sir. All right, so as it is usual, we're going to have a 40 to 1 hour presentation, 40 minutes for the presenter, and then the Q&A sessions following. So Mr. Joseph, you will take the Q&A and then the final announcements. Today we'll be discussing about surrogacy, very hot topic for this time, now that the National Assembly is pushing bills. And to do that discussion for us today, I'm happy to introduce a renowned professor, a fertility specialist and gynecologist. For today's topic is Professor Kenneth Ekwedigwe. Professor is a professor of gynecology who started his education in Modib Memorial Primary School, Onitsha. You know, when you have senior citizens, they want you to know where they started from, where they are, and where they are going to. So permit me to give an elaborate profile of Prof. He proceeded to the famous Christ the King College, CKC Onitsha, from there to St. Charles Special Science School in Onitsha, where he made his 9 distinctions. Wow, so he has been a very bright student from the beginning. From there, he went to the University of Benin, where he bagged his MBBS and later had a master's degree in public health. In the same institution in 2015, he did his NYSC with the 3rd Battalion Nigerian Army and proceeded to do his residency in Irua Specialist in both the National Postgraduate Medical College of Nigeria and the West African College of Surgeons. He is a fellow of International College of Surgeons, fellow of Minimal Access Surgery, fellow of Assisted Reproductive Techniques, and associate member of the Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. His passion for medical law led him to obtain a bachelor's degree in law at the National Open University of Nigeria. He also has a master's degree in health economics, policy, and management from the famous University of Nigeria, Enugu campus. Prof. Ekwedigwe is a seasoned researcher and has over 80 publications in peer-reviewed journals with over 30 publications in Thomson Reuters ranked journals. He has over 20 books chapters to his credit. He was a pioneer CMAC of National Obstetrics Fistula Center, Abakaliki, and the CEO of St. Elizabeth Hospital and Fertility Center Limited, Trans-Ikulu, Enugu, which is one of the leading IVF centers in southeastern Nigeria. He is a devout Catholic and happily married. Hello? He's a devout Catholic and happily married to Engineer Martha Ekwedigwe, a senior lecturer with Alex Ikweme Federal University, Ndufu Alike Iwo, and blessed with 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls. So Prof will not require PGT anytime soon. So his first son is currently a medical student. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome with online clap ovations, Professor Kenneth Ekwedigwe to do his presentation. You're welcome, Prof. Over to you, sir.
Okay, good evening, viewers. Today we'll be discussing a very important topic, a very global topic, a very controversial topic too, and that is surrogacy. Okay, so so that you can follow in the presentation. Okay, sorry, I'm coming. Sorry, just Jiffy. Yeah.
You can start sharing your slides, sir.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to come to. Okay, my sharing. Okay, just a little while. Okay, I think that's all.
Yes, I can see you're sharing your slides. We'll be patient for the next 2-3 seconds.
Okay.
Yes. So you put it on the PowerPoint presentation mode, and then you start your presentation, sir.
Yeah. So I don't know if everybody can see the slides now.
We can see you,
Okay,
sir, but
now.
you start from the beginning. This is not the beginning of your slides.
Okay, so this is the beginning now. Okay.
Perfect. So we're good to go, sir. You have 40 minutes.
So today we're going to discuss a very seasoned topic, a very global topic, a very contending issue, and currently a competing legislative topic globally all over the world, and that is surrogacy. And we're going to look at so many issues surrounding the topic. We're going to look at the types of surrogacy, the types that are practiced in Nigeria. We're going to look at the parties involved in surrogacy. We're going to look at the costs of surrogacy amended chapter 4, sections 33 to 44. We're also going to look at the
Fire on.
Yes. So the history of surrogacy is as aged as the Bible itself. So it was first recorded in the book of Genesis, chapter 16, verse 4, where Abraham's wife, Sarah, her case of long period of infertility, had to give out her maid, Hagar, of which that was the first time traditional surrogacy was practiced. Of course, in the recent time, the modern surrogacy started in 1953, where frozen spermatozoa were used to also fertilize a woman for traditional surrogacy, of which in 1978, the discovery or the event of IVF, the popular Louis Brown betting, gave rise to the gestational surrogacy, which is now widely practiced. Then in 1986, of course, frozen eggs were used to achieve viable pregnancy. So these two, 1978 and 1986 encounter, gave rise to the development of a form of surrogacy that is widely practiced, and that is gestational surrogacy. Then majorly we have two types of surrogacy: traditional surrogacy, gestational surrogacy. What is traditional surrogacy? Is a type of surrogacy where the mother is also the biological mother of the child, because she uses her egg in the process of the birthing of a child. She is either inseminated artificially, or it may be through in vitro fertilization, but the fact remains that one of her gametes is used for the surrogacy. While in gestational surrogacy, the surrogate has no genetic link whatsoever or connection to the child. So the embryo is created using the egg and sperm of intended parents or donors and transferred to the surrogate mother. And it's the baby now implants and now grow from there. Then there are two modes of surrogacy. Discuss the types. The mode of surrogacy now are the type of arrangements you can have in surrogacy. That's what I mean by mode. And there are two kinds of, two modes of surrogacy. We have the altruistic surrogacy and the commercial surrogacy. These are the two terms we'll be hearing, often, both in the public and most places where surrogacies are discussed. Of course, we just heard our president, our amiable president, mention something on banning of commercial surrogacy. So what is altruistic surrogacy? Is a surrogacy arrangement where the surrogate receives no compensation beyond reimbursement for medical and other pregnancy-related expenses. So it's not for any gainful purpose. It's just more like charity work. While commercial surrogacy is the type of arrangement where the surrogate is compensated financially beyond her medical costs. Altruistic surrogacy tends to be more socially acceptable, and it has been embraced by so many countries on earth because of the compounding issue with surrogacy litigations and other ethical issues that surround surrogacy. So it's not for profit making. So the country where commercial surrogacy is very prevalent is in United States of America, especially the state of California and some other states, but majorly states of California and Pennsylvania and some other few states in America. So, but most people practice altruistic surrogacy. So what are the parties involved in surrogacy? Majorly, we have 5 parties. The first party is the intended parents, the surrogate mother, the legal people, the lawyer, the doctors, the health facility or the ART centers, and the agencies, the intermediary agencies, or what popularly known as surrogacy agencies. Now, we're going to look at the medical indications for surrogacy. Most times people seek for surrogacy not because they want it for social reasons, usually for medical reasons. And some of these conditions include the congenital absence of the uterus, the popular Rokitansky syndrome, Kosa-Rokitansky syndrome. Post-hysterectomy is also an indication after removal of the womb for some reasons, either primary postpartum hemorrhage or due to malignancy or other things. Then structural anomalies of the uterus, uterine diaphy, biconate uterus, multiple uterine fibroids, severe adenomyosis, persistently thin endometrium from endometrial tuberculosis, Asherman syndrome, repeated miscarriages, repeated IVF failures, repeated unexplained infertility, repeated failures also from non-receptive endometrium, life-threatening medical conditions like cardiac and renal diseases, and of course, biological inability to conceive or bear a child. Of course, currently, the same-sex marriage and single parenthood, which is now globally embraced. These are some of the indications for surrogacy. And what are the steps involved? The steps involved include patient selection, sourcing for surrogates from ART banks, selection and screening of the prospective surrogate, counseling, legal requirements, financial contracts, and transparency of all these arrangements of the contract. Then the ART section, the control ovarian stimulation, the synchronizing the cycle of genetic mother and the surrogate, window period for embryo transfer, and of course, subsequent obstetric care to delivery. Then what are the minimal requirements? The most important or the common requirements usually or that are commonly asked for is at the age bracket for surrogate mother and the age for intended parents. The age for surrogate mother is usually between 21 to 45 years. This is from American Society of Reproductive Medicine. There are so many age range from so many other colleges. Okay. Then for the intended parents, the age is usually between 21 to 50 for the woman, 26 to 55 for the man. But the combined age for both intended parents should not be more than 110 when you combine their two age. So that's usually the current gold standard that is being used by American Society for Reproductive Medicine. So the combined age should not be more than 110. Then of course, for the surrogate, she should not smoke, should not abuse alcohol. She must have delivered at least one child without health complications. And she must pass through certain physical and mental evaluation. Then for the intended parents, there should be a documented history of inability to give birth to a child. And in some countries, it is required that they must contribute at least one gamete to the child. Okay, so these are then for the intermediary agencies, they can serve as a matchmaking group to bring the surrogate and the intended parents together, and they are also meant to ensure proper processes and arrangements. Okay, but again, the surrogate agencies, there are a lot of issues with them, ethical issues and legal issues. And a lot of them are also engaging in what we call surrogacy black markets and short practices here and there. So it's a major issue. We'll come to that later when we're discussing Cambodian experience. Then we are going to look at the cost of surrogacy before we enter the legal issues that borders on surrogacy. Then for altruistic surrogacy, which is widely practiced in most countries, in Australia, the cost is between 10,000 USD to 70,000 USD. That is United States dollars. That's what I mean by USD. In United Kingdom, in UK, the cost of surrogacy is between 10,000 to 60,000 pounds. So in a USD is approximately 13,000 to 77,000 US dollars. But on the average, the altruistic surrogate is compensated with 15,000 pounds at the end of the process. Then for commercial surrogacy that is practiced in majorly in US, the cost is between 60,000 United States dollars to 150,000 United States dollars. So if you look at the upper range, you agree with me that the cost is quite enormous. 150,000 USD is close to 250 or 260 million naira if you convert it to naira. So the cost is quite much, and that's why you have a lot of transnational surrogacy, because people are trying to cut costs. And that's why the drift is mostly in African countries. Then the risk associated with surrogacy is quite enormous. It's just like likened to risk in normal people. But again, we know that in obstetrics, we know that multiple gestation is one thing that gives you virtually all the risks and all the complications in obstetrics. So the risk, because most of them have more than one baby transferred, they are saddled with a lot of obstetric complications, which include preeclampsia, eclampsia, postpartum hemorrhage, gestational diabetes, amniotic fluid embolism. And that's why most legislations now are insisting on single embryo transfer for surrogate mothers. Then, of course, the emotional issue, especially when severing the bond between them and the baby that they get birth to, is quite challenging. But studies have shown that they usually overcome those emotional turmoils and trauma. So I think I'm now going to go to the heart and soul of today's presentation, which is on legislations and the legal issues and the surrogacy jurisprudence. Now, we're going to look at some countries briefly. There are some countries that have outright ban on surrogacy, and these countries are majorly people in Europe, European countries. Austria, Bulgaria, Finland, France, Germany, Italy, Norway, Portugal, Spain, Sweden. All these people have strict ban on surrogacy. Malta, Japan, Saudi Arabia, they all have ban on surrogacy. China also banned surrogacy in 2001. Then in some countries, they only practice altruistic surrogacy, which is voluntary surrogacy. And these countries are Belgium, Denmark, Greece, Netherlands, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and so many states in United States of America. So they only practice altruistic surrogacy. Why commercial surrogacy is legal in countries like Georgia, Israel, Ukraine, Russia, and California in US, United States. So Ukraine, Russia, and Israel, they have embraced commercial surrogacy. Then in Bulgaria, there is a serious restriction on surrogacy, so that they have even changed the term, the word. They have recoined the term from surrogacy. They now call it substitute mothers. Okay, and of course, because of illegal surrogacy black markets in so many countries, we will look at Cambodia very soon. The people have banned surrogacy because the reason for the ban is majorly because of its direct link to human rights issues. So the infringement on human rights, which are fundamental rights, is usually a very difficult case to legislate and adjudicate in the court of competent jurisdiction. It's quite difficult and challenging because these things, many statutes in so many constitutions. So it's really difficult. It's usually a very, very turbulent thing for courts to adjudicate on issues that borders on human rights. And that's why most countries now feel that to play safe and to reduce the money on litigations and on government, it's better to have an outright ban on surrogacy, or at least restrict it to altruistic surrogacy in such a case that the court issues may not be so much. When we look at some decided cases, to open our eyes on this. Then the other concerns in surrogacy are ethical issues. There are a lot of ethical issues because people look at it that the rich are exploiting the underprivileged. So it's viewed from the mindset or the point of exploitation and commodification. Then in religious issues and religious views and other things that borders to religion, Catholic Christians, of course, we know that Catholic has a major population globally among the Christendom. So the Catholic Christians frown at traditional surrogacy. Islam also considers traditional surrogacy as gravely immoral. Okay, so these two big religious groups consider surrogacy from immoral point of view, and that's why it's also difficult to propagate and market on a wide scale. However, with the advent of gestational surrogacy, the religious people are relaxing on that. Okay, because it does not affect them so much. Now we are also going to look at the bane of surrogacy, which is on fundamental human rights. We are going to look at the ground norm in Nigeria, 1999 Constitution as amended, which is actually in Chapter 4 of Nigerian Constitution, sections 33 to 44. Here, the 11 fundamental human rights were clearly enlisted. And these are the issues that we'll be looking at when you are discussing surrogacy. Section 33, which is right to life. Section 34, right to dignity of human person. Section 35, right to personal liberty. Section 36, right to fair hearing. Section 37, which is so important in surrogacy, right to private and family life. Section 38, right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Section 39, right to freedom of expression and press. Section 40, right to peaceful assembly and association. Section 41, right to freedom of movement, which is also a major issue in surrogacy. And Section 42, which is right to freedom from discrimination, which is another issue, major heart and soul of surrogacy, is all enlisted here. Then Section 43 and 44 has to do with acquisition of properties in anywhere in the country. Now, the women's rights. What are the rights of these women, that the parties that are engaging in surrogacy? The intended parents, of course, they have rights. And what are their rights? They have rights against discrimination. They have rights to enjoy family life. They have rights to, for them, as I mentioned, to found a family. So they also have rights for their own reproductive freedom. So if you look at these rights, right against discrimination is in Section 42 of Nigerian Constitution. Right to found family is in Section 37 of 1999 Constitution as amended. Then for the surrogate mother, she has her reproductive rights, which is in Section 33, right to life. She has right to her health and bodily autonomy, which is Section 34. Okay. She also has rights to privacy, which is Section 37. She also has labor rights and right for favorable working conditions. Then for the surrogates, the child of surrogacy or child born out of surrogacy, the child has his own right or her rights. And these rights are enshrined in Child Rights Act of 2003. It's also enshrined in Convention for Right of the Child, which is in Article 3.1. And what are these rights? The best interest of the child should be the primary concern of all that is involved at any point in time. So the best interest of the child is what everybody should pursue. And what are these best interests of the child? The right to citizenship, right to identity, of which Section 37 give rise to these rights, which is right to found a family. When you found a family, a child now has right to identity, has right to citizenship. And it's also in so many other statutes. Article 7, Article 8 of the United Nations Convention on Rights of the Child, 1989. Okay, we mentioned the Nigerian Constitution. It's also in so many other charters. Article 16 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. The Article 23 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, 1954. Article 10 of the Committee on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights of 1966. The European Convention of Human Rights of 1950, American Convention of Human Rights of 1969, African Charter on Human and People's Rights of 1981, Association of Southeastern Asian Nations of 2001. All these rights that I've mentioned are clearly enshrined there as the inalienable rights of these people that are embarking on surrogacy. Okay, now in Nigeria currently, we don't have any documents to work on. However, in 2024, a member of the House, Honorable Ala Kalo, was able to move, was able to push a bill, okay? And the bill was on Nigerian Surrogacy Regulatory Commission bill. And this bill is still undergoing the process of what do you call it, legislation, which we are believing that very soon it will be a working document, to be an act of parliament, and it will be a working document. However, in this bill, it stipulates that a commission should be set up for surrogacy, and anybody that's embarking on surrogacy should register with the commission. And failure on that registration will attract 1 million naira fine or 5 years imprisonment. So if you have any surrogates, people that want to embark on surrogacy contract, they have to first of all be registered and recognized by the commission. However, this bill prohibits commercial surrogacy in Nigeria. Should we see the light of the day? So he sponsored this bill, and currently in 2025, the same man is also sponsoring another bill, which is on women health and surrogacy protection bill. That is the bill, women health and surrogacy protection bill. And this young man has done so much. However, I've always asked a question. The human resources that he's using to articulate all the things inside the bill, I don't know where he's sourcing them from. Because obviously, I don't know whether, President, you may throw more light on this after this presentation, where he's getting his human resource, because pushing for all these bills without involving the parent body that should actually be in the forefront for this bill, I don't think is proper, because we may end up getting what we didn't bargain for. Then we're going to now look at some issues that may come up in the course of practicing surrogacy. And what are these? These are some criminal charges that someone may, may be charged with or may be litigated upon. And these criminal charges are forced labor. So if you are in surrogacy business, someone can come and, arrest you and put up a criminal charge on forced labor. Another one is human trafficking. Human trafficking is quite holistic and encompassing. It involves child trafficking, women trafficking. So many things are under human trafficking. Then exploitation can be charged. Abuses on women, such as coercion of women, inadequate medical care, inadequate legal protection, lack of informed consent, all these things can come up. Social mores, historic violations, especially if you're coming from a religious perspective or cultural perspective, especially from the northern part of the country. Then for the child, you can have child trafficking as a criminal charge. You can have sale of a child, sales of children as it happens in black market surrogacy, and these what they call this pregnancy that they call I'll remember. Okay, this popular thing that women are doing child sales. Okay, organ trafficking can also come up. Then sexual exploitation of these babies when they now come of age can also come up. Then, of course, India has one of the biggest surrogacy markets, but because of gross exploitation on these poor women, because of illiteracy and ignorance, the government has to put more like a serious restriction on that. Okay, then the Cambodia experience we share shortly. Then let's look at some decided cases in surrogacy. The first case that was recorded in from the legal archive, the case laws, was the case of Paradiso and Campanelli, okay, versus Italian government in 2014. It was a case of embryo adoption. So these people adopted an embryo. The couple, the intended couples, they didn't have any genetic contribution, any gamete contribution to the pregnancy. And they got a surrogate to have the baby for them. However, after the delivery of the baby, the case became an object of litigation, and they were denied rights to parental rights to the child. And the ground for that was that in Italian law, for you to qualify as a surrogate, the intended parents, have to parental right as intended parent. One of the parents must have contribute a gamete to the surrogacy. So because of that, it was obvious they were denied the rights of parenting that child, and the child was put off adoption. And another parent had to now come up and adopt the child. They even took this case to the European court, and I think up till now it's still being adjudicated. Then the local classicus, which is the case that gave birth and hope to surrogacy globally now, is the case of Johnson and Calvert in 1993. It was decided in California Supreme Court. So it passed through lower courts before it got to the California Supreme Court. And it was a case of Mark and Christina Calvert. They were the intended parents, and Anna Johnson, who happened to be the surrogate. Now, at the delivery of the child, Anna Johnson approached a competent court of jurisdiction and asked that she want to keep the baby, the child, being the one that birthed the child, the biological mother of the child. Now the court had to decide between who is the biological mother and who is the genetic mother. That was the issue before the court. However, at the upper court, Supreme Court, the lower court judged in favor of the intended parents, went to appeal, it went in favor of the surrogate, went to Supreme Court. The Supreme Court now decided that the intended parents should be the rightful owner, parent to the baby, the child. And their reason was based on intent. And that was the first time the intent test came on board. Intent test. And what is intent test? Whoever that wishes to mother and raise a child is considered the legal mother, and not necessarily who carries the pregnancy. So the intention was what was decided by the Court of Competent Jurisdiction. And the court also upheld the validity of surrogacy contract. So that was the first time the validity of surrogacy contract was upheld. So it was a highly celebrated case. Now another case was the case of John Buzanka and Luan Buzanka. These were a couple. They were the couple. They approached a surrogate mother and had a surrogate contract with the surrogate. At the end of the day, before the delivery of the baby, the baby is Jesse Louis. The man and the woman now had a divorce. They divorced before the baby was delivered. However, the man now approached the court of competent jurisdiction and decided that he is not ready to take responsibility for the baby. So the case also went through all manner of adjudication. One of the issues that came up during the case was the man stated that the contract agreement was signed after the embryo was transferred to the surrogate. So that kept that case in dark, because if the contract was signed after the embryo transfer, it actually does not really keep that man in hold legally. However, after looking at the whole thing, the higher court also used the intent test to decide this case. An intent test was that the fact that the intending parents had intention had been issued to father and mother and raise a child, that makes them legal father and mother to that child. And as such, the John and Luan were mandated by court to raise the child. And the birth certificate of that child was also revised to bear their name after 2 years of this legal battle and adjudication. Now, the Cambodia experience, very interesting. Cambodia, we know, is in Southeast Asia, and they are quite poor. They don't have any resources. Most of them engage in tailoring and other menial jobs. So their women are quite poor. Most of them are impoverished. So when Thailand banned their surrogacy, when the Thai government banned surrogacy, most of the intended parents drifted to Cambodia for surrogacy practice, which is what is actually happening in Nigeria now of today. So they drifted to Cambodia, and in Cambodia, a lot of short practices were taking place. Surrogacy black market was well established. The agents were ripping people off. And now, why was it popular? Because the cost of surrogacy in Cambodia was between 40,000 to $70,000. But the surrogates are paid only $10,000. So the agents make so much money, and at the end of the day, they gave only 10,000 United States dollars to the surrogate. So, but the people were happy embarking on the business because it was giving them money, the indigent women in Cambodia. However, the Australian government were the first people to alert their citizens to make sure they don't have anything to do with Cambodian people, surrogacy practice. They issued a statement. Chinese government also issued another statement warning their people about the practices in Cambodia. So in 2015, and as at then, about 14 agencies and clinics sprung up in Phnom Penh, which is the capital of Cambodia. So in 2015, the Cambodian government now became concerned about the practice. And in 2016, October 2016, the Ministry of Health banned all forms of surrogacy in Cambodia. And the ministry also sent communication to about 50 surrogacy agencies as at then, declaring surrogacy to be completely banned. The people doing ART practices were also warned to desist from surrogacy practice. So in October 2016, there was a raid on surrogacy camps. Okay, and during that raid, an Australian nurse was arrested, and 2 Cambodians were also arrested, and they were charged for human trafficking because they now criminalized surrogacy practice as at then. That is a criminal offense and is fall under human trafficking. So they were charged with human trafficking, document forgery, and illegal practices, surrogacy clinic. Then the court also sentenced them to 1.5 years in prison for acting as surrogacy agents, okay, and also for falsifying birth certificates. Then in 2018, another raid was done, and during this raid, about 32 surrogates were arrested. Then in November 2018 of the same year, another raid was also done, and 15 surrogates were also arrested. But out of these 15, 11 of them were already pregnant. So they were arrested and they were incarcerated. Okay, but again, the human rights came up. People now came with all manner of human rights disposition, fundamental human rights, infringement on fundamental human rights, and all of that. So there was a lot of voice, and that now made their government to now give them only 6 months imprisonment. So the first people that were, the first raid, which involved 32 people, were now released in June 2018 after spending 6 months in prison. Then the one of this November were released in April 2019. So, and as a condition for their bail, they were mandated to raise those babies by themselves. So the surrogate mothers were mandated to raise those babies by themselves. And failure to do that, it will attract 18 years imprisonment. The intending parents were denied rights to have access to those children and to parent those children. Till date, most of them, I think about 5 cases are still undergoing legal battle and issues, but none of them has seen the light of the day. So if you now look at it globally, you now critically, you will discover that a poor lady from the Cambodian hinterland now mandated to raise baby that he never bargained for, something he never wanted, and without any compensation whatsoever. And failing to do that, we instead her going in for 18 years imprisonment. So it's evoked a lot of issues in the country. But currently, these things, of course, 2019 is not far from now. It's about a few years ago, 6 years back. Nothing has come out of this case, and these young ladies are currently raising these surrogate babies. So that was Cambodia experience, and it's an experience that everybody should learn from. And that is the more reason why Nigerians should act very fast to get enabling laws on surrogacy. Now, the questions begging for answers are whether to restrict or ban the practice in Nigeria, whether to allow for domestic or transnational arrangements as be widely practiced, whether to practice altruistic surrogacy, which most people are now embracing, or whether to stick to commercial surrogacy, which is practiced in United States of America, Ukraine, and Russia. And what are the role of the surrogacy agencies, the intermediary organizations? What role are they going to play? Then, of course, the human rights issues. What are they, and how are they being regulated? So these are questions begging for answers. So I will summarize by saying that surrogacy is a great deal globally, and is something that is at stake, okay, and is an emerging and growing practice. The intended parents has right to have a family as enshrined in Constitution, United Nations Charter, Nigerian Constitution, all the constitutions on earth. They embrace right to family life. Should this right be taken away from them? The surrogate woman also has a chance to earn a decent wage while providing much needed service. It is a fundamental right. The child born through surrogacy has rights to citizenship and identity. These rights are fundamental rights. The state, in its the ability, should guarantee safety and health to the people, the populace, is also a fundamental right to life, as enshrined in Section 33 of 1999 Constitution as amended. So, surrogacy ought to be regulated to prevent human rights abuses that can and have occurred, especially in the case of Cambodia and India. But for me, the practice should not be banned. It has come to stay globally. Nigeria must act fast in her legislative processes to avoid Cambodia experience. These are my references, consulted widely, a lot of legal books. So I'm appreciating God Almighty for the knowledge. Then, of course, I must use this medium to thank Dr. Jola Adewusi, who is meant to be my co-presenter, and most especially for sharing her materials with me. Despite the jet lag she had on transit, she was still able to deliver Her passion for the association is commendable any day, anytime. Of course, my amiable president, the workaholic president, Professor Prayer. Thank you, sir. Then the AFRH Legislative Legal Committee group. Thank you so much. I made use of your materials. Then the AFRH Secretariat. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Kenneth Ekwedigwe. Sorry for murdering your name. This was a very, very elaborate, interesting, stimulating, thought-provoking, awareness-creating session. Thank you so much for this. I will hand over to my co-moderator, Mr. Joseph, to handle the Q&A sessions. Please do well to type in your questions so that he will be able to give answers to them. Thank you very much again, Prof. Mr. Joseph, are you there?
I'm here, ma. Thank you very much, Professor Kenneth. It's a wonderful experience and learning so much about Nigerian Constitution with regards to surrogacy. Please, we have opportunity to ask questions and get appropriate answers. So those of us online, let's kindly type, go to the chat button, click on the chat and ask your questions. And we are going to read them out for Prof to attend to it. So while we are waiting for your questions, I would like to remind us about registration for the 2025 AFRH conference, which is coming up in Victoria, please, your first. So which is coming up very soon. Please, let's take advantage of the early bird registration and let's also follow our AFRH social media handles on X, on Instagram. So we have the 15th annual conference that is coming up in Lagos, International Conference. And the theme is New Frontiers in ART, the roadmap to the future. And the sub-theme is Cutting Edge Approaches to ART Practice for Nigeria. Innovations Shaping the Future of Fertility Care. So we are using this to inform us that we should take advantage of this opportunity and register for the conference, and which will be taking place in Lagos Oriental Hotel. So early bird for registration is a discount of 10,000 Naira during registration. Offer ends 30th of June 2025. And also we can follow AFRH on Instagram, AFRH Nigeria on Instagram and on X. And we can go to the website for registration, which is conference.afrhnigeria.org. Registration, like I said, closes on September 15th, 2025. But early bird closes on 30th of June 2025. So let's take advantage of that opportunity to register. The sub-team anchors on optimizing success in ART, advances in embryology, endometrial receptivity, and implantation. So one and all, those of us that are online and our colleagues that are offline, please let's remind them of registering for the AFRH 2025 International Conference, and also for us to follow AFRH Nigeria on our social media platforms, Instagram, X, and share AFRH Nigeria on Instagram, AFRH on LinkedIn, AFRH NIG on X, to send emails, Association for Fertility and 1406 on Facebook, AFRH Nigeria, And we can also send message at AFRH Nigeria. So follow us on all our social media platforms and share.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Yes, I think we need to quickly run through, yes, the questions so that Prof can answer. There have been several stimulating questions from our participants. So let me just read the first question so that we can have answers to them quickly. So, Prof, sir, the first question reads, who should practice commercial surrogacy? There is a disturbing trend on social media where influencers and non-medics are at the forefront of advertisement for surrogacy. So who should practice commercial surrogacy? That they use online platform to perpetuate this act, and it's really disturbing. I don't know if you get the question, sir.
Yes, if you, my lecture, if you are listening so keenly, I mentioned that surrogacy, most countries are not practicing commercial surrogacy because of the laden litigations and ethical issues. So most countries are not practicing commercial surrogacy. Okay, and even the current bill that is being sponsored by Allah Akau, the Honorable Allah Akau, the commercial surrogacy was actually banned, not even discussed. So it's banned in that bill, and that's why me and my own worries. Where is he getting his human resources? Nigeria has been practicing commercial surrogacy on a wide scale, even though there is no legislation to that. Okay, it's what we are doing in Nigeria. We are using contract law, so it's under contractual agreements, whereby the two consenting parties who should be at least of contracting age, which is 18 years in Nigeria. So if they are 18 years and above, and the court view them that they have the power to give valid consent, they are in good health condition, they are not coerced. If they come together and agree to go into surrogacy, the lawyer, who is now the third party, the legal person, he now sees to that agreement between these two consenting adults. In Nigeria, that's what we practice, so it becomes valid. So, and that is also upheld in the case of Calvert, okay, Calvert case that I mentioned again before in California, where the contractual document was upheld by Supreme Court of California. So that is what we practice in Nigeria. We look at the intent of the adults, the parties involved, look at their intent, and look at the valid contract document that they have made and duly signed. So we uplift both. So the contractual document is a valid document in the court of competent jurisdiction, as upheld in the Calvert case. That is what we practice in Nigeria. But suffice it of me to say that Nigeria, as of today, does not have any law whatsoever on surrogacy. And that is what we are working assiduously on, to see how we can get a law that can now protect everybody. Thank you very much. I don't know if I've answered that question the way the person that asked it wanted it to be answered.
Well, I think you did, and you also added other documents, because there was a question to say, apart from the usual IVF consent forms, what other legal documents or responsibilities do these centers, that's fertility centers, have? So I don't know if you have anything to add apart from what you said.
Let me throw more light on that. In surrogacy, the way we view it as a contractual agreement between two parties. I mentioned that before. Now, what happens in Nigeria, and so many places in Nigeria, that was what happened in Cambodia, why it became a black market thing. The adults involved, one of the adults will now say that they don't want to have access to the other adults. The contract is between the surrogate and the intended parents, not the hospital, not the lawyer. Two of them, the intended parents have a need. They now approach another person that they feel that have something that can solve their problem, which is the surrogate. And they now started talking and they now agreed. So there were offer, there were considerations. These are elements of contract. They have agreed. Then they now brought a third party, who is the legal person, to see to that contract that they are not violated and there is a witness to that. So what happens in Nigeria is that you now see an intended parent saying that she doesn't want to know the surrogate, she doesn't want to have access to the surrogate, and now put the burden on the hospital, which is actually meant to offer only IVF treatment or practice. Because what they are looking for, they can't on their own initiate it or get it actualized. They need another part, which is the IVF ART center, to help them do that. But Nigerian system, you now see the ART centers now taking over the work of all the parties, the work of the agency, the work of the lawyer, the work of the surrogate, because of money. That is what happened. So they look at what the intended parents are offering and they lose guard. But if they should any case go beyond that, the four wall of that hospital, and get to any court of competent jurisdiction, all these people, the legal personalities, we all appear. And you also have to mention their level of participation and commitment. But I think the one thing I want everybody to take home, that it is extremely wrong for an intended parent to say that she doesn't want to have access or know the surrogate. That makes it a crime ab initio, because the contract is between the intended parents and the surrogate mother and not otherwise.
Thank you very much. You've done justice to that. But I just want to chip in. Sometimes it's the surrogates that don't want to be known, so they want to do anonymity. And since we do not have laws already guiding this, then, for confidentiality, on whose side really would you be? But you will give more light to that because there are several other questions for you to ask. So there's one question that says, who would be the next of kin of the surrogate mother? Because of the way the practices are, there may be deaths and things like that, okay? So they want to know who would be the next of kin. Then Innocent Eze says, under which law are ART practitioners offering surrogacy in Nigeria? So you combine those two together.
Okay, the issue of next of kin in a surrogacy contract is quite controversial, but again, that contract is all encompassing. That surrogacy contract has already subsumed some level of risk and liabilities to the surrogate mother. So because if you are going to go in with an obstetric issue, you are going to get pregnant and you're going to go through the processes of pregnancy. We know that pregnancy is a physiological process. However, pregnancy is also saddled with a lot of complications and challenges, which nobody can predict. So the moment the surrogate mother is appending her signature to that document, he has already accepted those liabilities and risks as it were on signing that document. So she should die in the process. That contract becomes a defense to the intended parents.
have more questions to ask, sir?
That is the position of the caveat case.
Okay. All right. So this anonymous questions is about the roles and responsibilities of practitioners in the field of ART. So the person is asking if the presence of them in AFRH is going to help to reduce some of these malpractices. I think that question will be left for Presido at the end of the presentation. Maybe he will say that. Then someone is asking, Innocent Eze again, how ethical is the use of contracts in the regulation of surrogacy? Are bioethics involved in such contracts? Sir?
Okay, then let me quickly throw that light. The hallmark of surrogacy, let me just make it now as a categorical statement. The hallmark of surrogacy in law is transparency. So if you are seeking for anonymity, you have to elect an agent that will represent you. You bring the principal, you get an agent to represent, whether you are the surrogate or the intended parents. So transparency is the hallmark. Now, the role of the ART clinic is to offer IVF services, ART services to these surrogates, either IUI in traditional surrogacy or IVF in both traditional and gestational surrogacy, or PGT, whatever you are offering, you offer the services. That is your limitation in law. And you now guide them medically, because they also need a lot of medical advice. The antenatal care and so many other things that the surrogates may need, you offer them if you can, okay, or you refer them to the appropriate person that can do that for you. Okay, but the role of ART practitioners should be restricted to their ART practice. You leave the legal person to handle whatever issues that will come between these two consenting contracting adults. We let them handle their issue. But the one that borders on medicals, you handle it. That is the limitation and the responsibilities of the ART clinic. Then the issue of contract on bioethics, I don't really understand, because the surrogacy on its own is a physiological thing, because getting pregnant is physiological. So the issue with surrogacy is just someone assisting another person. So the rights of the parties, you don't want them to be infringed. You don't want them to be exploited. You don't want them to be violated. That is the essence of the legal people. You want these things to be as discussed. The terms and conditions to remain status quo ante throughout the course of the surrogacy or the period of the contract. That is the position of that contract. So the issue of bringing bioethics and all of that into that, I don't know. I know IVF, everybody, most people embark on IVF treatment, and that will not be having ethical issues with IVF treatments. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir. So many questions coming in. So there's one question from Ms. Iniki that says, how many times can a surrogate do surrogacy? That's one. Then in cases where we have medical conditions like placenta accreta spectrum following embryo transfer, and the surrogate will have to undergo a total hysterectomy, what happens to the intended parents and then the surrogate mother in cases like this? So three questions for you to answer.
Okay, the first question is, hello?
How many times can a surrogate?
The surrogacy, the law, the American Society of Reproductive Medicine and other enabling laws in the places where surrogacy are well established stipulates only once. Someone can only do surrogacy once and not more than that. So once. So anybody that has undergone surrogacy once should not be allowed to undergo another surrogacy. That is the position of the law in those countries. Until we have our own surrogacy bill, maybe Nigerian own bill may be different. but at least yes, American Society of Reproductive Medicine, that is their standard. Then the issue of placenta, accreta, increta, pecreta, all those morbidly adherent placentas. The contract takes care of all these risks and liabilities. We know that pregnancy, you can only say a labor is normal retrospectively when the woman has delivered. That's when you can now look back and say, oh, this was a normal labor. So anything can happen to an obstetric woman. Anything that can happen to a woman that is pregnant. She may die in the course of the pregnancy from so many things, from embolisms, pulmonary embolism, amniotic fluid embolism. She can die from medical conditions in pregnancy. She may die from primary postpartum hemorrhage, postpartum collapse. So many things can happen to a woman that is pregnant. So, but that contract takes care of all these risks and liabilities. That is the essence of the contract. And I want to also sound a warning. Please, never ever embark on surrogacy without having those contracts duly signed, and also checked severally. You get them signed, get them itemized, get them documented, get them signed, and it should be signed by a lawyer that has valid license to practice in the country. So must be signed by someone that has valid license to country. You have to look at the contract holistically before you start embarking on any ART treatment on the surrogate. It is extremely important. That was the case in Johnson and Luan, the Bozanka family. The man hinged on that as a defense that the ends were signed, and as such brought up the issue that it was not a valid contract, and as such the contract never even existed. However, we thank God for the judge.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. I still see more questions about bioethics. I want to appreciate Barrister Undiga, who is here. She has stated clearly that there are no laws in Nigeria criminalizing surrogacy contracts. So that's for our information. Now, I have a question that is for the AFRH, considering that there are several practitioners in it. So somebody wants to know what AFRH is doing to regulate the practices, especially of surrogacy in Nigeria, seeing that we have both medics and non-medics practicing or involved in the surrogacy contract. So maybe the president will answer this. And I think that will be it, right? Yes. So what happens? Somebody is asking if surrogate refuses to consent to cesarean section. So the question will be rephrased. Do all surrogates have to go through a CS to deliver the babies?
Okay. Hello? Hello?
Did you hear me, sir? Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, am I still on air? Can I be heard?
Yes, you are. We can hear you.
Okay, yeah, the mode of delivery is something that must be clearly stipulated in the contract, because we know that some people have aversion for cesarean section, and again, there is nothing that is against having normal vaginal delivery in surrogate pregnancies. There is no law that is against that, both medically and otherwise. However, because the babies are precious baby, in obstetrics, once we have precious baby, we always advise, okay, it's a relative indication for cesarean section. It's not an absolute indication. It's a relative indication. So that caveat is what we usually invoke, because the babies are precious baby, and a lot of money finance has gone down the road, and a lot of psychological, emotional trauma and so many other things have also been involved in the processes. Physical effort, traveling, so many things. So when you look at the whole thing, the outcome of all the processes are those babies. So most time people don't want to take risk. So they quietly go in and severe the babies and and separate them, the mother and the babies. Then again, multiple gestation is another issue that had saddled with a lot of obstetric complications. So because of that, people also believe that the way to go is cesarean section. Then if there are obstetric indication for cesarean section, it must be upheld at all times. If there is breech presentation, of course, you have to invoke HANA study, the breech trial study, okay? So, and advice. So, a lot of things are factored, but the current concept now is that once is surrogacy is cesarean section, there is no law that says so, and there is no book that says so, and there is no publication or research that says so for now. However, because the babies are precious babies, and because of other obstetric complications, most people feel the way to go is to advise, can cancel the patient for cesarean section. That is it.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you everyone for participating. Unfortunately, we'll have to call it a wrap. Our time is already up, but I will advise that the Secretariat puts up the email address and people can send in more questions for Prof to answer. And also on the AFRH platform, membership platform, people can forward their questions. I want to thank the seminar committee, that's in person of Dr. The chairman of the webinar committee. I'm sorry, I forgot, his name skipped my memory. Thank him and his associates for putting this up. I'll ask President to please say the last words, because there are certain questions about what the role of AFRH is with concerning surrogacy. And then following this, I think we'll call it a wrap. Thank you everyone for your patience. Mr. President, sir, over to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sally, and thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Professor Ekwedigwe, for a fantastic presentation. We have had at least 90 participants throughout the webinar, and a lot more. Several people were not able to join for technical reasons. We apologize to those, but the recording is going to be available on YouTube. A lot of questions have arisen from this presentation, and a lot more questions are left to be answered. 2 bills have been proposed. The previous one by Alao Akala was what we were working on before we heard of another bill proposed by one Okonkwo from Idemili South, I think, on the same surrogacy. So it's work in progress, and it is just part of the problems associated with ART. If you go into donation, oocyte donation, as many controversies exist, and there are a lot of malpractices and sharp practices that need to be curtailed. So we need an all-encompassing law that addresses all aspects of assisted reproductive technology. It's not easy. Even the legal drafters who we try to approach requested for up to 6 million naira just to draft what will be submitted for consideration by the people who are looking into this bill. But we are working on it, and hopefully we'll get to the end of it. Barrister Undiga is here. I'm sure she would have a lot to say regarding the Professor Kenneth's presentation. And even amongst the lawyers, there are differences of opinion, and there is no consensus on most aspects of surrogacy. So we need to work on our own regulations that would guide our practices. We cannot enforce, we are not an enforcement agency, but even ASRM does not enforce laws They are simply an association that provides regulations that are adhered to by their members. So we are going to continue this discussion straight into the conference. I'm sure the webinar committee is going to bring up more topics relating to this particular surrogacy series, and you will have much more robust discussions. So I want to encourage everyone to register for the conference and participate. We have over 200 clinics, only 15 submitted data last year. That's part of the problem. We hope that many more will submit this year. And those that have registered should actively participate. We need resources to pursue what we are doing. And at the end of the day, without the payment of dues and what we require, we can go nowhere. So time is fast spent. I'm not going to say much more, but please keep attending and we'll continue the discussion at our next webinar. So thank you very much, the organizers and the Mrs. Bamil and Joseph. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you to the team. I think we won't waste much of your time. So on behalf of the webinar committee, training committee, Dr. Akinola and his assistant, Mrs. Adewusi, who is here present, we want to appreciate everyone. And we say you keep a date with us in 2 weeks for another interesting session. We call it a wrap. Mr. Joseph, any last words?
Sorry, just before you go,
offline?
I just want to acknowledge that one of our patrons was throughout with us. Professor Bomi Ogedengbe was here. Professor Ladipo also tried to join. I don't know if he finally succeeded, but we thank them for their presence.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Joseph, last words, and then we call it a day.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, AFRH. Thank you very much, Mrs. Bami. It was very exposing, and by God's grace, we pray that the next webinar will have more people, more participants like this. Very encouraging. Let's have a lovely day.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Yejide. Thank you to the Secretariat. So on this note, we call it a wrap. Good night, everyone. Have a restful evening. See you in 2 weeks.